And welcome back to the Event Modeling and Event Sourcing podcast with your hosts, Martin and Adam. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Adam. How are you?
Great, wonderful. I'm now enjoying sunshine finally in Vancouver, so
Yeah, today
that's
was
really
raining in Germany.
good. It's raining in Germany? I
Yeah,
just
it
think
was
of our
raining
weather.
today. Yeah,
Nice.
this morning I was running in the rain, which I don't mind to do that. Sometimes it's really
Oh,
nice.
yeah. Keeps you cool. I like it too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I also went for my first run of the year. I can't believe I haven't been running, but I've been so busy. But I'm back to running, and I feel nice
Yeah.
and sore already. Just a half hour, but I didn't stop running. I should have done the run walk alternation,
Yeah.
but I didn't. It felt too
I
good
feel
to
good.
keep running. I'd
Yeah,
rather run slower than to start and stop. There's something once you've ran your whole life or many years, it brings you a bit of a joy, especially in nice places. I know Vancouver is quite beautiful, so going outside to run is a kind of a gift to be able to
yeah,
run in the by the forests and the nice clean air. So anyway, quite a busy week
yeah.
for you, Martin, in terms of business. You're booked for the entirety of April now.
April, April
Is
is
you have no time for anything.
April is completely booked. May is already filling up. Event modeling is becoming great. Everybody wants event modeling, it seems. I love to see that.
Yeah, I'm very happy to see it too. And we had a really good workshop on Thursday, so
Oh
a
yeah,
few days ago. That was today's Sunday, so that was 4 days ago. And I was quite impressed to see some attendees that I didn't expect to like or be open to learning event modeling. And a lot of the people that are deeply entrenched in Agile are coming over to event modeling.
yeah,
I think they're making I'm guessing I'm speaking for them. If they want to talk about it, it's fine. They're making the connection. I think that event modeling is really that small design up front that the Agile community was talking about for many years, but I don't think there was enough of a good guidance for that. So one of the people that was at the workshop was someone that I known for over 2 decades in Vancouver in the tech community that was very much in the Agile space, and of course I was part of the Agile Vancouver organizing committee for conferences and whatnot, and all that. They weren't involved as much with that, but there was certainly a participant and someone that was putting forth agile projects across a large organization here
yeah.
in British Columbia. So anyway, really, really good to see people like that come around and see that it's not something so alien. Event modeling has the goals to be flexible. And I think that's why I keep exchanging the terminology. I don't say we're agile. I'm saying we have flexible solutions. I think the word agile already has too many things associated with it.
Yeah,
So
it's a burden.
when I'm
It's a
talking
burden.
about it, I'm saying, be flexible, have a flexible solution.
Or
What do you think?
adaptable, right? Adaptable.
Adaptable. Yeah,
Yeah.
Adaptech, right? Yeah. So that was a happy coincidence. But
I think what many people are doing right now is tipping toes. They heard about event modeling and now they want to find out, is it really what they say, or is it like many of the promises that Agile made, just an empty box? And now they're tipping toes, and I think many are very surprised how what is in this box. Pleasant
yeah,
surprise.
yeah, and there's definitely many levels of that, just like with Agile, that you
Yeah,
can go a little bit deeper into that. And I think for me, one of the final steps to really appreciate it is to be able to implement fixed costs. I
yeah,
think
that's
that's
the ultimate goal.
so.
If you can do that, there's nothing more to do. That's the goal.
And I think it's not that hard to get agile people to look at that because I think you get a level of I think there's a level of realization that agile people have when they've been through so many planning meetings and they're using t-shirt sizes or some of these other Fibonacci numbers to
Yeah,
talk about complexity. I think they realize what that is and that it's still deferring to internal knowledge of some developer to think like what they think the complexity is. And I think with event modeling, it's really um, not making it, not putting that level of responsibility on someone's shoulders, which may be intimidating. It may be used as something that's going to control the situation. Because if you have an event model instead that says this is, five slices, that's
Yeah.
a lot different than saying this is a medium size story,
Yeah,
right?
it's
So
very very concrete, and you don't
yeah,
have this weird translation between story points and person days, which every company I ever work with does. So
yeah,
nobody is using story points the way they meant to be used. Everybody is
yeah.
translating them to person
And you
days.
have an opinion on these story points. Like someone in
Yeah,
management will say, like, I don't care if you say story points, translate it to me and tell me how long
yeah,
it's going to take, and then they're going to
exactly.
put that, and then they're going to put that deadline, and they're going to kill you with that deadline later. So people naturally are scared what they're going to say. So you have this padding and all that. So I think
Yeah,
once people realize what the goals of the story points were, and they finally see an average velocity for you know per slice. If you look at 10 projects that are non-trivial and you count up the slices, you can empirically kind of get, hey, we have a good sample
yeah. Our slice
of
is
the
two
work.
days.
And then
Yeah,
we can just say, hey, every time we look at an event model, you know each one of these things takes a week for our juniors to do, but a very senior person can do one a day, or even more. And they can use, or like us with when we're doing work for other companies as outsourcing companies and consulting companies, we can say that it's a fixed cost. So if I have a team that has a varying set of skill levels, some junior people, some intermediate, and some senior people, then I don't have to expose that risk to my client, because all they're paying for is really, hey, do all these slices work? Okay, they all work, then I pay you a fixed cost.
yeah,
And it's for me as a consulting and contracting company to take that risk on, to say that I was able to have these three junior people, and these three junior people produced three slices, and I had this one intermediate person, and they did two slices or three slices this week, and I had this senior person with them, and they did five slices in the same week, and altogether we had these nine slices. And when the client gets the invoice, they're like, okay, you did nine of these slices, and so there's your money for it, and then you guarantee that they're going to work, so you're going to fix bugs for
yeah,
free. Very nice. And then it's really for me to say, okay, here, junior person, here's your money. Intermediate person, here's your money, and senior person, here's your money. And guess what? Without me having a subjective interview, like, do I think you're senior? Maybe you're not. Maybe you're just an intermediate. Maybe I should pay you this salary. Oh, I don't know. I'm not quite sure if all of that kind of judgmental stuff, this bias, this subjectivity. It just doesn't need to be there. And so I'm very happy that I can remove that aspect. And I think and we've talked about this numerous times, but it keeps coming up. And I think the people that are contracting, they also feel they don't have the pressure from the other side of my expectations on them, especially junior people. They have a lot of gatekeeping and imposter
yeah.
syndrome problems and all of this kind of stuff. And inclusivity. I really don't care who you are. You're just doing the work. So I think it's really nice. And so I'm always excited to hear when there's other people doing this. And I really want, one of the handbooks I want to write is like kind of like the Valve handbook, or the GitHub early days handbook. This is the Adaptec handbook of how we worked through project management using fixed
Yeah.
costs, and how we do that. So I think that's on the long list of to-do lists for me for many things that
I
I have to
think
write.
many people would read this,
Yeah,
and I'm not quite there with my company. So I'm in Germany. It's really hard to sell fixed cost. I'm working on that, and I'm hoping to do that more.
yeah,
But I had a few interviews recently, and with people. I'm looking for people for the company, and I was discussing this, and even the people who apply for positions, they are really afraid of this concept. I mentioned it only briefly, and they were really afraid because they have never heard it before. It's so completely new,
mm.
but I'm working on that. I really want to apply the Adaptec model also in Germany fully.
Well, I had an interesting lunch. I think it was this Thursday actually, or I think it was, or was it no, it was the Thursday before, and it was someone that worked with us back in 2017, 2018. I think 2018 in our old office, and this was their first experience. I mean, this is someone that didn't know me at all, and we were looking for more people for projects as they were spinning up, and this was exactly the same situation as you're saying, is that we had this um, weird way of paying and say,
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
I have nothing but they said, really, what's the risk? They have a lot of experience programming. Most of their experience was in Java, so this was a Node.js project. So they're like, oh, well, I'm not really good at JavaScript, but I'd like to get the experience because there's a lot of Node projects out there. So I said, well, this is a really good way for you to learn on the job, because you're de-risking this in one way for yourself, because you
Yeah,
don't have to now take, a whole month or however long you need to brush up and learn Node.js and React and all the other things that we were using, and even like new technologies that like Event Store at the time, and other things. So I said, you know what, you're right. I can, even if I'm going to be slow. And I told them, you can look at the slices that the other guys have done, and they're lucky enough to work with our CTO and and others, and and they were able to look at the slices that the experienced people did, and very very quickly start to implement their own slices. And I see this as I really mentioned the extreme junior person that learned through slices and the fixed cost model, but I forgot about this experience with someone that's coming in that has a lot of programming experience, but has obviously never worked on this fixed cost model.
yeah,
Um, and they're quite happy. So they reached out to me because they heard the podcast on .NET Rocks. They're now doing more .NET development, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember working with Adam, many years ago. So
nice.
they got in touch and let's have lunch and kind of like reflect on this. And yeah, they I mean they were quite fond of. I mean, we had a really nice office at the time there. I mean, I even had, back when my parents were in better health, they're like, hey, we're retired, why don't we help you run the office? So my mom would come in with my dad and they would say, hey, why don't we vacuum? You don't have to pay cleaners, pay us. And I was like, I'm
Nice.
not going to pay my parents. But it's kind of fun to have my parents come into the office and clean the place and all of that. And so people got a laugh out of that. And then, of course, I said, well, why are we spending money on lunches outside and all this? So my mom ended up cooking for everyone.
Oh, really?
We
That's
bring
lovely.
the
Nice.
Polish dishes that were, we would put them in the freezer in the kitchen, and then
Nice.
Tim and the others were like, oh, this is excellent. Tell your mom I really like this one. And all that. So that was really fun back and forth. There's some positive things about working in an office like this. This was one of
Yeah,
my fondest experiences of having an office, is just having my parents involved. Just, we were, that was not, at that time we were still growing. So this was the first official larger office, and we grew from, 3, 4 people to overflowing where we had to rent more space. It was our highest growth rate at that point. But during that time, my mom was still coming by and with these with these homemade
that's
meals. So
lovely.
that was,
Nice. Yeah,
everyone really enjoyed that. So that was I'll look at that memory. And so this is the person remembered this too, right? So they remember working on this fixed cost way of doing things. They remember having to fix bugs on stuff that they wrote themselves, but they were totally fine with it. They
yeah,
saw how they had the control of the situation and how they could share work. But they also had this fond memory of, like, having this very um, neat family style type of company to work in. So,
yeah,
uh, but yeah, so that was really nice. And yeah, back to the point. People that are in Agile, I think um, they will really see the benefits that the slices provide, the same end goal as what they wanted from story points, in essence.
absolutely.
They wanted that level of um, knowledge to be able to give, just I know Agile people hate the word estimate, but it's really, they were like, oh, well, I'm going to say what how complex this is or whatever, how much we're biting off or whatever. But in the end, to the people that are in management, they always want to know, what am I spending? When am I going to get it?
When is it done?
They don't
Exactly.
care
When is
for
it
everything
done?
else, right? So
Yeah, that's the
all this
interesting
beating
thing.
around the bush to like, this is just a reflection of complexity. We're not signing our name to a deadline and all that.
Yeah,
That problem is so easily solved with slices. It's just it doesn't
exactly.
come up ever again. You don't have this
Yeah,
like, oh, this one manager bought into story points. This other one says he did, but he really doesn't. He's a really traditional, old-fashioned guy that's just going to say, "I want it done," whatever. It solves the problem for both,
yeah,
right?
because of this uncertainty with story points, you have this weird thing that every layer that is involved adds a little bit of buffer to this original estimation, and suddenly you have an estimation that is four times the size what the developer said, and still it's not enough. And then you have all these roadmaps and targets that you make up these project plans, and this all is completely nonsense. This is one
Yeah,
of the reasons why I founded my company. I couldn't do this anymore. This
yeah, yeah.
drives me
Same.
crazy.
Yeah. So we all wanted to step out of the, you know, living with the problem, not really being able to address it
Yeah,
directly
no
with
way,
the
never
core.
again.
Let's address the core issue instead of playing around with band-aids on the situation at every company, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
same for me,
I get
absolutely.
immediately emotional when we talk about this because I had so many bad experiences.
I
I
know.
really, it's really, it drives me crazy.
Yeah, and I was kind of disappointed in the industry. I thought that working with programming, I'd have the same kind of experience I had when I fell in love with it, and how creative the process was to create solutions, and then you fall into the management craziness of companies,
Yeah,
and it's totally not about technology, and it's
no,
such a splash of cold water on you that, oh, this is a not giving me the same good feelings. I'm dealing with managers, people that have agendas, opinions of you, and I don't know. They see your abilities as sometimes as threatening, sometimes as not enough. You don't never know where you end up with certain people. So I'm really happy that I can work in a way where that subjectivity is not at play anymore. But let's get into
yeah.
the announcements because we
Oh yeah,
forgot about the announcements. We're supposed to have them at the beginning. So the new chapter, let's reintroduce the chapter that's about talking about event modeling to the rest of the organization,
yeah,
including the C level, the C suite people. So, people that are in charge of the vision, in charge of signing the checks for everyone, approving roadmaps, and all of that. So, that's definitely something that people would be interested in. If you're in this industry, you're going to have to communicate about how you're doing things, and if that includes event modeling, this is and event sourcing both. That's something that people will hear about, and maybe you need to be able to communicate better to those people because otherwise they're going to get someone else's interpretation. Your manager's manager is going to talk to the director, and by that point, they're going to get a very small percentage of the truth or you know the accurate picture of what's going on.
yeah. What I really like about this chapter, so the chapter is called "Handle the Organization," and I wrote the original chapter and I sent it out to the reviewers. One of them was Gabriel, for example, and they all wrote back their experiences because they are all either went through this process or do go through this process right now. So everything in this chapter is really makes a lot of sense because it comes from real life experiences.
Yeah.
How do you talk to the C level? Does your C level executive need to understand the event model? How do you do it? Who needs to read the event model and stuff like that? I think they're really important questions.
Yeah, it is having buy-in at the higher level, or just even someone saying that, well, we like this new idea, and having someone at the higher level saying, we know the risks, and it's okay. Go work with Adaptec or Martin's company, or whatever company that has event modeling and event sourcing. You go ahead and work with them. We realize that they're um, treating de-risking the situation. We're happy with this, and I think that's really good. So it's a little bit, and I've worked this way too, without the buy-in and working on shadow ops. So I think a lot of people
Yeah,
are in a situation where they're trying to get away with doing event sourcing behind the scenes, or get away with doing event
Yeah.
modeling because the rest of the organization is not doing it. And I've been in that situation, even with unit testing and test-driven development and Agile many years ago. So always when we're trying to introduce new things, there's this concept of like you're doing things behind the scenes, behind people's backs, to because they just don't know. And so I think this is a really important chapter, because you don't want to work that way. That doesn't that is, to work behind people's backs is not the best. I
That,
think.
you know what? That's exactly how we introduced Git back in
Yeah,
2007.
same.
Everybody was
Yeah.
working with Git. SVN was set. So what we worked with this weird Git SVN bridge. So nobody knew, but
Mm.
we were all working
Oh
with Git.
yeah, I remember. What was that decommit
Oh
command
yeah, it's
for
horrible,
SVN?
horrible. And
Remember?
all you had to do this mapping with users and stuff. It's horrible, but still,
Yeah,
much better working with Git and this weird thing instead of Subversion directly.
yeah. I mean, at some point, I just said, let's take the tips of every branch and just commit them as is, and manually blast away anything in merge conflicts, and
Yeah.
just switch over. Because I was part of a lot of these migration source
Oh yeah,
control
oh
things.
I sold endless and infinite SVN to Git migrations around 2011. I don't know.
Yeah,
Infinite. All these companies had to migrate, and they all wanted this complete history. And I was always asking, do you really need this history back from 1995? Yes, we
yeah,
need it for
yeah,
everything.
exactly. The sad thing was that things like Visual Source Safe actually mangled history, so that I mean, you couldn't even get. This was back in the even earlier, like before Git was adopted somewhere. I remember having to work on something, um, or at least someone on the team was working on an older project, and they're trying to get an old version out of Visual Source Safe, and it was just corrupt. Like that's just you don't get that with Visual Source Safe, and so they finally found like some old hard drive in the storage area that happened to be from a machine that someone was using on their desk, and they happened to work on that project, so they were able to get the files from that. But the
Wow,
servers backups were corrupt. That's how
nice.
bad these old systems were. So anyway, yeah, lots of fun stories from back
Yeah,
then.
yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, I don't know if I have any more to say about that, but yeah, definitely get the book, because this new chapter is something that I think you will save you a lot of headaches when you're introducing these concepts.
I
Uh,
already, some people already wrote back and told me exactly what is in this chapter is exactly what happens in our companies right now. So it's really realistic.
yeah, and yeah, definitely good to have some guidance on it, because you've been through it, I've been through it, and it's nice that the patterns are there for someone to read about, and at least they'll know what to expect. So
Yeah,
yeah, and so yeah, this workshop that we had on Thursday, back to that, that was a lot of fun, but there was way too much to go over in the event modeling side. So we have one question from the community here. When do you create a new swim lane?
yeah. Oh, this question comes up quite often, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I had I worked with a team just recently, and
But wait,
this.
what are swim lanes for people that are listening to this for the first
Oh,
time?
what are
What
swim
do you mean?
lanes?
What is a swim lane?
So it depends a little bit on the detail you are working in the event model, but typically you simply try to group your events into something meaningful. Could be services, could be boundaries. So in the beginning, you start with one storyline. I always call this the storyline. All events in one row. You read them from left to right, and you make sure it makes a nice story. Business person can read them from left to right or from right to left, and it should make sense to them. But if you look at this, typically you don't have this one thing. There are business groupings within your swim lane. If you look at a card system, for example, there might be something like the product selection, there might be something like the card, there might be something like order submission, which could all be different swim lanes. And that's basically you try to group your events in a meaningful way. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think one of the things I would add is that organizing your event model into swim lanes for understanding communication doesn't mean that you're going to have to implement it that way, because a lot of times
Right.
people see the swim lane as something that's going to now kind of dictate that I have three swim lanes, therefore I'm going to have three microservices here, and that's not it. There's a definitely no. You can do it. I mean, nothing's stopping you. It's just a way to organize your solution. Is really how I see it,
Yeah.
and how it should be treated. Because I mean, I said this before on the podcast, is that we've prematurely added services, the physical actual implementation things, and then what you're doing is you're unnecessarily needing to publish events from one service to the next, and that just adds extra work. So you want to have this stealing from Agile, this Yagni. You're not going to need it until you're going to need it
Yeah.
um, way of working. So um, I would I would defer the implementation to use the swim lanes as separations of separate services until absolutely necessary. But definitely have the swim lanes there to help you visualize what's going on. So even this happened to us for an inventory system and a point of sale. So a sales system and the inventory system were looked at as two different subsystems, and we regretted putting them into separate microservices in the implementation because
Yeah.
there was so much back and forth. It really was not providing value to have them sit separately. So sometimes we learned the hard way.
Actually, there needs to happen a lot for me to split out a service. Just recently, for a customer, I did quite the opposite. We took all the microservices and we put them into one thing, and
Hmm.
everything became easy suddenly. We removed all these microservices and made
Yeah,
them a structured monolith. Beautiful.
yeah,
Very, very easy, very simple.
yeah. I think a lot of these propensities to want to separate things out are coming from the old problematic systems that you're just trying to organize things in any way, so you
Yeah,
artificially try to make smaller pieces to manage. But with an event model and event sourcing, the event model gives you a real collaborative, accurate picture of what's going on. The event sourcing gives you the accounting to really understand how you got into a certain situation. So it demystifies how things work, and gives you a better mechanism for managing the implementation. And if there are bugs and things like that, they're not insurmountable. They don't come up again if you fix them. So those two aspects really um, remove this propensity to want to make a small project that's just going to sit there without the rest of the code distracting you. The
yeah,
slices really do a good job. The swim lanes in terms of visualization do a really good job of organizing the solution, so that you don't have this pull towards trying to make a small project that just has five source control files to go through. We
yeah,
really never feel in event sourcing and event modeling. We never really feel that, oh, this is too much for me to handle. The project size is too large. I never feel this way. We always have the right amount of context when we're talking about a slice and how it's implemented. It's pulling in exactly what's needed to be pulled in, even though the overall project might be quite large. And we have some huge projects out there. So yeah, that's kind of my feeling on it. I don't know if you have the same experience, Martin.
Do you use swim lanes also to design the streams you will have in the end then?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Sometimes, not always. Depends on if I think it comes up when you're trying to show concurrency, maybe a ticketing system or an inventory system. You might want to show um, the actions of two separate users depleting inventory, which one wins, and what do you
yeah,
do when the other person has only part of their order filled or something like this. Then it's easier to see two separate sub swim lanes for
yeah,
two orders that are getting items added or something like that. So again, it's just a notation tool. You can start to divide up and have further sub swim lanes for entities as well if you need to.
yeah.
It's really, I don't do them if they don't help. I do them if they do.
I typically do that, but not in the beginning. So it's very easy to fall into the trap to start designing aggregates right from the beginning by making too many swim lanes. So I always start with one swim lane and I start moving events to other swim lanes if there is really a big reason. Otherwise,
Yeah.
stay in one swim lane as long as possible to keep it
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Next topic then is when do you create an entirely new event model? This
Yeah.
came up during the workshop, I think.
This came also up during the workshop, and I think there are different answers to that. So in the workshop, I explained how I do it typically, and I use that oftentimes for alternate flows. So in the workshop, we had the example where there was an error. You have a use case where you have two outcomes, two possible outcomes. One is the success, customer registered, or customer registration failed. And if you want to show how the failure use case works, you can either just put it into the norm into the regular read model as a new chapter or a new workflow, or what I often do is I put the alternate flow into a dedicated model and I just link them, and that works pretty well for me.
Yeah, I think I have the same method of working. Um, the one thing that I would say is that we covered this topic actually, and this other topic too, is that Miro itself is a lot better at handling larger work, uh, larger models now. Like I
Yeah,
remember long ago having to have separate Miro boards because just the performance, and maybe it's just that the processors have caught up. But I think they've also improved the platform. But for Miro, I remember, you know, this is not a separate event model, but actually a separate Miro board because now I think the convention is that you just have one Miro board, but
yeah,
you may have multiple event models on there that you navigate through. So
yeah,
sometimes, I mean, it's just the layout and how you navigate an event model. If once your system is non-trivial, then of course this entire um, event model can become incredibly long. So you're scrolling left and right quite a bit, and it's just easier to just break it up like a paragraph and just have different areas below each other to
yeah,
this.
and especially if you have these very very long models, it becomes a pain if you need to put a slice in between somewhere. Then you need to move all these hundreds of slices to the right. So then it's easier to have smaller models to work with.
Yeah, exactly. So that's I think I think also like some when people have the luxury to have some of the like the custom built tools for event modeling. I know Sam is working on his on auto, and there's others there. Arian's working on his, and there's always an event modeling project out there to automate it specifically for that. And so once those mature, then we could probably see, a reason to not even worry about breaking out a new one. I think dynamically, an event model will shape itself to what you want it to show you. Um, but you can always have this expand everything view, and then you will have
Yeah,
something that stretches out incredibly long, but you could
yeah,
have the equivalent of a page of a line break.
yeah,
Um, how you have multiple lines on in your source code. I think it'll still the same thing will happen with event models. So if you got a large monitor in your boardroom or something like that, or even at home, you can start to navigate this. But it's not something you'll manually need to maneuver. I think these tools will have just the word wrap equivalent that'll
yeah.
continue to make as much context visible as you want. But then
Unfortunately,
the dynamic stuff is good too because you can say, show me everything, but exclude the slices that manipulate this, let's say, payment service. I'm not interested. I know that we do payments fine. So don't complicate that model with anything to do with payments. I just want to look at the how the rest of the stuff works. And so I think the dynamic filtering this way is going to be incredibly helpful as well. So we'll see how the tools kind of evolve because you can probably see something that's shrunk. It might be just a little sliver between two slices. Hey, there's some hidden ones here because you're
yeah,
not showing the swim lane for payment. But if you expand it, you'll see that there's four more slices here that have to do with payment and how it's done. But I'm not going to take up real estate on your screen, and you can concentrate on the rest of what's going on. So I'm looking forward to those. I mean, I really want to develop some of those myself, and it seems like a lot of fun to be able to work on tools like that. So I
Yeah,
think
as long as you're
other
not in
people will
Miro,
get the same.
as
What's
long as
that?
you, as long as you're not in Miro, that is fun. If you try to do
Yeah,
that
yeah,
with Miro,
exactly. But
that's
I don't know. I mean, who knows? I mean, Miro might provide more tooling where it'll be much easier to do that. Maybe they'll have some sort of other frame type of element that you could use for similar types of things, or some other type of filtering where you can,
yeah.
very easily add a dynamic filter, and it'll allow the resizing of the canvas itself or what's on. Who knows? I mean, I
That
can't
would be
speak for
nice.
them.
Yeah. Currently, it's really hard to do stuff like that in Miro. It's almost impossible,
Yeah,
unfortunately. And
and
today I had a nice discussion with someone who took the online course. And if you buy the online course, you get this license for the Miro tooling. And this person was really it's limited to one board. So you get the license, but you can only use it on one board by
right.
default. And this person was really confused because I have these different models and I have them on all these different boards. And I said, why? Why are you doing that? You get the license for one board because for 90% of all projects, you don't need more than one board. This should be
Yeah,
enough. And if you're done with your project, just move on to the next one. One
yeah,
board should be enough. So this license should be enough. And this really made this person thinking. And I think it might be, I might be doing a good thing by limiting it to one board because they
yeah.
can only use one. Yeah.
Well, you should be like that's the idea. But let's rewind a little bit. The point of an event model is to be the blueprint for the project. So you don't want people to be flying around like they fly around in a wiki or something like that. That's where information goes to die.
Yeah.
So you need the one document that everyone is using every day so that it keeps up to date. It's a cart before the horse. You update the document before you do any work, right? Those are, you got to do that. Otherwise, just forget it. Just don't do anything. You're going to not know what's going on, and that you're going to go back to the old ways of doing things,
Yeah.
and have the same problems back. So an event model has to be the way you organize work. It has to be, if I want to code, then put it on the event model to show what you're going to do and then do the work, right? And then don't have it spread into multiple places so that I have to open up a separate Miro board for something else. Have it on the same one. If things are linked, you can put links in the Miro board to fly to another area. Like you do that all the time, right? Like when you
Yeah.
have the same green box being used further on in the
Yeah.
workflow, you have a link back to the original
Easy.
one, which will have
Yeah.
all the given when thens below it and all that stuff, right? So yeah, those are the common things. So that's when you create a new event model, is when you run out of space on the right. You're tired of scrolling left to right. That's when you create a new event model. All right,
Yeah.
good. Easy answer.
I mean, I think it's really, maybe it's really important to understand, and for some people that might be new, you don't have to do everything in one line.
Mhm.
It's not, event modeling does not require you to have one big event model from left to right, which covers the whole system. It's not meant to be used like that because
Yeah.
it can get really long.
So hopefully that gives people some idea of when to do this. Let's jump to the next topic then. Really like getting through these fast today. This is good.
Yeah.
Limit as opposed to the last one. Limits of event sourcing. When do you not do event sourcing? Good question.
That's a good question that also came up somewhere in the Discord. For me, event sourcing is the default. And I only deviate from that if there is a compelling reason. Quite the opposite how the industry sees it. The
That's right.
industry, if you read it, it's always like, oh, we do CRUD, and only if we have a very good reason, we are using event sourcing. If you ask me, it's quite the opposite.
Yeah, same. Absolutely. I mean, I simply will not take as default losing information. It's just absolutely non-starter for me. That's why I needed to have my own company, because I cannot be at the whims of some crazy decision to willfully erase something that costs nothing to keep. Actually, I mean, these are
Yeah,
pennies you're talking about. And in terms of the benefits of having the history, the amount of money you save by not having recurring bugs, etc. The snapshot view of the world is incredibly dangerous. It's a mystery. I think Yere, one of our community members, put it best in an old post, maybe from 4 or 5 months ago, where he does not want to have to be a detective to find out how something went wrong. He wants to have the evidence right there of how it went wrong. And that's what you get with event sourcing. It's not just that you might need that information to implement a future feature. It's really having a reliable source of truth of breadcrumbs how you got somewhere. And ordinary logging and ordinary history tables are after the fact, that are done with hit and miss accuracy. They're not they're not going to be done if they're an afterthought when you're dealing with a bug emergency bug fix. You're like, you know what? I don't have time to update the history table or change how the history is written or put in that extra logging statement or double check that the logging statement is in the same format as the rest of the logging statements. I don't have excuse upon excuse. All of that is erased. All those risks are erased if you just do event sourcing, because you
Yeah.
have to have state in your past events. And so, yeah, I mean, for projects that I wouldn't use event sourcing is where I'm not managing information. So, for example, yesterday I wrote a little, the start of a small stock ticker widget for my desktop. So I'm using Kubuntu, and you can use Plasmoids, which are QML and JavaScript things you can easily plunk into your desktop and just have whatever little gadget you want to show whatever you want. Very, very easy to do. But this is really all it is one green box is how I see it. So why would I have an event model for the green box if my event model for this widget is one green box? So I don't really need an event model for this widget. It's really a projection. It's the amount of code that I would have in one of the green boxes. And I really don't own the source of truth. I mean, I guess I could if I put in different stock ticker symbols and I want to do an undo button so that I'm like, oh, I erased some things I was paying attention to. I wanted to have IBM stock price in here, but I erased it. Or I had them ordered in a different way. I want to see what order I had them in last week. I might now I'm managing information. Right now, it's an information management system, and that's where I might have a small, 3, 4, 5 slice event model just to show what happens when I hit the undo button, or I view the history of what my tickers were last week, and things like that. And maybe if I evolve it to include maybe notifications when some stock price goes over a certain price, I might want to have a history of what my alerts were when they got hit and all that kind of stuff. Then it makes sense for me to have an event model. And I would put that into the project at the top, maybe in a Draw.io or something else that's open source friendly, that people can open up and say, hey, how does your stock ticker symbol widget work? Well, they can open up the event model and see all the workflows. Okay, here's how you set up your ticker symbols. Here's how you set up alerts on them. Here's how you restore previous ticker symbols or whatever it is. If I have 3 or 4 little workflows that I support in my little widget, I'll put them onto an event model. But
Yeah.
simply at this point, the scope of the project is entirely limited. I just really want something on the screen to show me, a small little bar chart of, the last 2 days, so maybe the last 16 hours of trading. And that's all I'm kind of wanting to do for now. And it's
Yeah.
really just implementing one little green box.
Yeah.
So
I had an interesting discussion with someone today on LinkedIn with exactly this question. And the answer was he is not using event sourcing for highly regulated systems because GDPR is so hard with event sourcing. And I agree.
I would think it would be the opposite, because you can explicitly say what you want to erase.
Yeah, I mean, the argument is always, and GDPR is a difficult topic in event sourcing because you don't find too much information how to handle it correctly. Do you use something like crypto shredding? Do you use external
Mhm.
stores and stuff like that? I get that, but I don't think that is an argument against event sourcing. As you say, quite the opposite. But I
Yeah.
get where this argument is coming from. I think we need to do a little bit of a better job to explain how to handle this and also show how it works. I
Yeah,
think this
I
is,
think we had this topic actually on the podcast earlier on, like 10 episodes ago,
yeah.
where we talked about it. And
I mean, there's
one
also
of
a chapter. There's also a chapter in the book about it.
yeah, it's important because there is it's a gray area. It's actually not black and white as to when you can be forgotten. Like any kind of law, there's it's subject to interpretation and all that. Because okay, well, I can erase your phone number, your social insurance number, etc. It can be crypto shredded, or it can actually have been stored on mutable storage, etc. But at some point, if someone stole a backup device from an institution, a company goes bankrupt and sells all its stuff. How do you clean that up? Um, how do you erase the fact that by your activity you showed that you were there using that system, right?
Yeah.
You can see remnants of this on social media platforms where if someone erases their account, it says, "Oh, there was a comment, but it's deleted," or you have 15 likes, but we can only show you the names of the 14 people that liked it. Things like this. There's
Yeah.
always these little pieces of evidence of someone using a system. And if you look at the timestamps, or someone can use the Wayback Machine as to when that like happened or where that comment happened, and they looked at other activities of yours on another system, they can correlate that, oh, that was probably you. So it's not something that's 100%. But yeah, I mean, agreed. For me, the GDPR is someone grabs, some company goes out of business and they grab the backups and the other stuff because another company buys this company that's going out of business, and they buy the current clients and all this kind of stuff. I want to make sure that if I stopped using the service, that what that next company gets doesn't have my phone number, my name, my address, and all of that. I have the right to be forgotten. That's what it's called in North America, GDPR in Europe.
Yeah.
But it is like I don't want the service anymore. So therefore, you should not have anything of mine that will put me at risk by people knowing information about me, because I don't know what you're going to do with that information, right? So,
Yeah.
and in event sourcing, it's really no different than any other system, because if you have that GDPR compliance problem, the events can point to a record that you store in a traditional database, and part of your infrastructure just fetches what that is, but your event is not something that's going to show
Yeah.
that, and that's it. You need to have your events take care of the mechanics of what service you're providing, but not using the personal information. And if you're
Yeah.
using that personal information, it has to be hidden behind IDs or hashes or something like that. And then when you don't want the service anymore, you go ahead and erase all that service for that user, as all that information for that user
Yeah.
from the destructive areas of that. So that's one way to do it.
Yeah.
Of course, different event sourcing technologies like Current or EventStoreDB, they allow you to scrub and delete actual events from the history. But I'm not 100% sure that that's the best idea. I want to have that boundary of like, here's my phone number, my personal information should be housed separately from the event that makes use of that or references that. I want to keep the event. I want to destroy the contents of that event.
Yeah. I mean, you can use this if you already have stored the events with the personal information, and then you realize, oh my God, all this information I need to
Yeah,
get
and
rid of.
there's ways out of it. Like, I mean, there are. We always say don't ever rewrite old events. Well, GDPR is kind of like there might be a case for scrubbing everything, and you might have to do it in stages. If you went a certain long path with event sourcing, where you're storing all this information, and now the auditors are on you, and you're like, okay, I got to rewrite the system to make sure it works, but we get rid of all the people that have signed out of our, opted out of our
Yeah.
service, stopped paying for our service or whatever, wanted to be forgotten, then I need to have a way to instrument my system to do that. And I think event sourcing makes that a lot easier. I think you have a lot more problems with a snapshot based kind of like current state database implementation, because your foreign keys and all those things will really get mangled when you're trying to do this. And you're going to have um, a lot of bugs come up where these referential integrities are going to really bite you. And
Yeah.
without the history of how you got there, it's really tough to unwind what you're going to do in each situation as you're doing that. So I would much rather be in a situation of like, hey, I've been keeping private information for 5 years, and now I have this problem to scrub everything but keep my system running. I'd much rather have an event source system to deal with than a traditional system where I have to deal with a whole bunch of backups and a whole bunch of really lousy testing that requires me to really mangle the data again and probably introduce unknown bugs because these implied references, implicit references within the data itself, where that might skip a referential integrity, and the code is going to break. I really don't want to work in this kind of blindfolded way of what happened in the past. I think it's much easier to make a non GDPR compliant system to be compliant if it's event sourced than without event sourcing. You're working without this evidence of how things work, so that you can safely say, yeah, I can delete the information, but how is that going to affect how the system runs? Because yeah, sure, I'm GDPR compliant, but we're down. The system is down. Like it's just right. So like, okay, that's a good way to go out of business, but you're compliant, but you're out of business because you have too many bugs now and things don't work.
My argument was every system I typically work with, you always think of these tables, this one table which holds the personal information, and if a GDPR request comes in, you delete it. But
Yeah.
the reality is much different from that. Typically, you have all these database triggers, wild replication. The data is everywhere because you just copy it over in the whole system, and you have no footprint at all. You have simply no idea where is this data. Is it in the backups? Where is it? It's distributed everywhere. Triggering.
Yeah,
it's wild.
I like this the event model and event source systems. You have this like really nice documentation of where everything is, how everything works. More importantly, how everything interacts. It's like it's fine to have a catalog of events and all that. That's whatever. That's not a big deal. We've had like database schemas and all that. I don't care about cataloging the events. I care about how the events are part of the behaviors and workflows that you have. It's the workflows that are important, because when you're deleting data, you want to know how a workflow is going to be affected. And that is way more important than just knowing what data you have. It's this codifying, like, having this a way of understanding how the interactions of the data is going to happen. So I think event modeling is a core kind of aspect. It is the information flow. So if you're deleting data, how is your information flow affected? Where do you have a crossover? Where's that data from one person affecting your reports for sales or whatever other thing you have, inventory tracking, etc. Right? So, like if you don't want to be part of the system, but you bought there's some products that are easily traced. You can find it being sold on eBay or something. You can link back to the fact that you were in that system, right? So these are interesting things to consider. But I would never ever want to have. I quite find it the opposite. This person that says, "Oh, we have GDPR, we can't do event sourcing," I think is absolutely insane to think that. I think to be able to scrub your data for things you need to forget and not have a map and accountability of how everything works, you can be 100% GDPR compliant, but you will not be 100% functional. On a non-trivial system, you will break things, and your business will suffer if you do that. So I have the opposite approach. If I want to do GDPR, I would never ever want to do it without event sourcing, because I need even more safety for missing holes of information, like making these voids where once there was information to make your workflow go, now you're forcing me to poke holes in it and still guarantee that the system works. How the hell are you going to do that without a map of all of your logic and your information flow? I think it's really not a good way to do it. So I have the opposite reaction. I'm like, if you're doing GDPR, it would be insane to do it without event modeling and event sourcing.
Yeah, especially event modeling helps so much with this. And I have this nice feature in the Miro toolkit, which is called the data trail. You can go to the last event in the workflow. You can select one attribute, and it shows you exactly which elements use this attribute and where is it originally coming.
That's part of like what Chris Condren coined a long time ago. The information completeness is really being
Yeah.
able to trace all these things
You
through.
see it.
Like,
You see it.
yeah,
You see it exactly. Okay, these events are affected. Here we are using it. Okay, let's look at these
yeah.
slices. It's 7 slices we need to take care of. Let's go.
I would
Easy.
even say that it's easier for GDPR auditors to use an event model and an event source systems to say, yes, correct, you are GDPR compliant. You gave me irrefutable evidence that you get rid of things and that,
Yeah.
that your system is running not despite you saying something but doing something else. Like, oh, but
Yeah.
we really needed that address because it's going to break this thing here in our workflow. I want to prove to the auditor that I can still erase these things, and hey, it's not going to give us an excuse to not erase them because something might break in our system, right?
Yeah.
We can
You
have
know
like,
what?
oh, we should stop deleting that information because it's breaking this feature. Like, that's the other side of it.
I'm really looking forward to the first GDPR uh, thing with auditors where I can show it the event model. It never happened until now, but I think at some point it will happen, and I'm really, really looking forward to it because I think
Yeah,
they will just like what they see because it's so transparent.
yeah, yeah. I'd like to see it go further. It's like where if there's systems that are highly sensitive to personal information, medical things, I want to see a requirement for an event model
Oh
so
yeah,
that you can prove
it should
that.
be. It should be transparent. You should prove where this information is used.
Yeah,
Good luck with the CRUD system. Simply
hmm
put.
yeah, exactly. And one of the important things is having different types of backups now, because when you have something that's mutable for personal information versus the system that's just making everything run, can you have backups that go back 5 years, but guarantee that there's no information that you can get about a person's address or phone number, and you
Yeah,
have a mutable thing on the side that just gets destroyed, and you might have a nightly backup, or maybe weekly or whatever, maybe goes back a month, that you could destroy at any point, or even go and you know filter out things from these historical backups. If you have someone resigning from the system, can you actually go and then scrub the data from the backups? I think this is really the only way to really do it
yeah,
successfully. So, but yeah, if you're dealing with a CRUD system, it's all shoved into the same thing essentially, with foreign key problems and implicit things in
yeah,
code that you don't know if something's used somewhere. So anyway, I would, again, just to finish the topic, I would I would not want to do GDPR without event sourcing.
yeah. So summarizing again, event sourcing is the default for me and for Adam, and we need a good reason to not do it. That's
Yeah,
very
I
simple.
just I can't work with my hands tied behind my back. That's how I feel without it. But
Yeah.
anyway, as soon as I'm done my small tiny little one green box implementation, I probably will add the event sourcing part to my widget. And again, event sourcing and event modeling should be part of open source information management systems, so you have the same scaling benefits and also the ability for open source contributors to contribute more easily, because you have this cadence of the slices to really understand how to add features, and really not have a very long onboarding time, because it's most open source projects are people's volunteer time. You don't want to waste that time having someone that wants to contribute to a project waste an entire week or a month to get up to speed before they can start to contribute. You want to make that as fast as possible. Have your open source contributors right there, helping from day one. Well, let's end it
Yeah.
on that note, and I'm looking forward to the workshops. Martin, thank you for all your work and the new chapter, and of course the course, the online course that you have now to go along with the book, and you can work through that. That's
Yeah.
something that definitely you should do. So get the book on LeanPub, get the course, work through it. Then you'll understand a little bit more where we're coming from, and hopefully you'll have that aha moment and start successful projects for yourself. So, hey, again, thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
All
Have a
right.
good week,
Thanks,
Martin.
Adam. Bye bye.
Bye bye.